I'm not sure where to begin with this game. Honestly, trying to organize my thoughts on this one is a bit of a nightmare. I think Stalin vs. Martians might have been both slightly ahead of its time and unfit for existence. It's like playing an interactive communist-themed fever dream that contains forbidden knowledge. I'm gonna deviate a bit from the formula here to do less of a review and more of a presentation on this strange game and its strange place in time. I worry about the hours I've lost over this game. For all intents and purposes, Stalin vs. Martians is a shitpost game. It is a game that is meant to be bad, meant to assault your senses, and meant to make me question my life decisions. Released April 29th, 2009, Stalin vs. Martians is the result of a collaboration between 3 different Ukrainian development studios: Blackwing Foundation, Dreamlore, and Endgame Studios. Normally, I would take this as a good sign. Ukrainians have been known to create janky yet incredibly entertaining video games. But the truth behind the collaboration was a vodka-induced brainstorming session between the game's producers during a New Year's Eve celebration. I added the vodka part. I know I joke about Eastern Europeans being vodka-addicted fiends, but come on. Do you really think 2 Ukrainians are sipping champagne on New Year's? According to Alexander Zima Sherbakov, in the single interview I could find, we hired Endgame to deal with the technical side of the project, cause the guys made couple of games based on the Blitzkrieg 2 engine. BWF/Dreamlore controlled the creative side of the project and produced it. He also makes a very interesting note about the game's budget, specifically stating that it was 5 times smaller than Braid's budget, which was $200,000. So with a minuscule budget of $40K, I'm surprised this game looks and runs as well as it does. It is clearly some kind of strange labor of love for those involved. The game was fairly controversial amongst traditional games journalists. Just about every review I can find hates this game. It is very easy to dunk on. At least most of the complaints are about the awful gameplay rather than the absurdist premise and visuals. But what I find interesting is the controversy Stalin vs. Martians caused in Russia. I'm, again, drawing from this one tiny interview with 2404, so keep in mind this is all from the perspective of one man. Russians hated this game at first, mostly due to the content matter. See, people either didn't want Stalin glorified or mocked in that manner. To quote Sherbakov, "In Russia, Stalin is a very controversial person. I mean, really controversial." Which may sound strange to any non-Russian listener. But the reality is that he isn't wrong. At the time of the interview, something of about 50% of Russians had positive views on Stalin. And today it's somewhere, I believe, in the 70s? Which might sound insane for a guy who's remembered for his deadly purges. But try to look at this situation with a modicum of historical objectivity. And this is a super simplification because I do not want to accidentally make another history video. Stalin played pivotal roles in transforming a nation of serfs into one of the greatest industrial powers of its time. But in doing so, he created a harsh totalitarian state that limited the freedoms of its people and sacrificed millions of its citizens for the better of the state. I can't sit here and deny the importance of the Eastern Front in defeating the Nazis during World War II. But I can say that Stalin's purges of the military created the conditions in which the Germans felt confident enough that they could invade in the first place. The best analogy I can create within American history is what if someone made a game about Truman or FDR fighting the Sea Peoples who've taken over the West Coast. They're both considered some of the greatest presidents in US history for helping to lay the conditions to propel the US into being the world's most powerful nation. But their own legacies are complicated by things like corruption scandals, Japanese internment camps, the enforced segregation of the military, and the use of nuclear weapons on civilians. The point I'm trying to make here is that people, and by extension the truth, are always far more nuanced than you may expect. And that it is very easy to look over the faults of your own leaders while pointing out those of others. That being said, fuck Truman, marry FDR for his money, and kill Stalin because he's an absolute monster of a human being. Altogether, the situation with the Russian audience is far more nuanced than it could ever be in the States. Because inevitably someone goes, "Herder, communism bad, vodka gulags blyat," and that's as deep as we go. Context established, let's get into the game. It starts with a command to rise for the national anthem, and then the USSR anthem plays in full. Past this is the title screen for Stalin vs. Martians, the unknown pages of the Second World War Game of the Year edition, accompanied with something some people might call music. There are no real options. You can't change the resolution size, texture quality, nothing. The keyboard layout is either orthodox or revolutionary, with no difference I can find between the two. There's a button that asks if I like cats. Yeah, from a technical standpoint, this is an abysmal piece of shit. I had to force it to run at 60 FPS, else it was a near unplayable nightmare. While I was able to get the game to run in widescreen via DGVoodoo, even that took a bit of finagling. The game itself won't render in widescreen. It's just a nightmare to record and edit, so sorry for the sidebars. I start up a new game and am confronted with a letter from Stalin. He has put you in charge of the top secret operation to save Mother Russia from Martians. Stalin gives us his regards and we get a fun little spot the difference minigame during the loading screen. You are then loaded into the assault on your senses that is the game proper.
Russia. My name is Ivan, I like you. I worship communism. My name is Ivan, I like you. Да, товарищ, Russian die. I'm dying.
What can I possibly say to make sense of this? My men just held the line against little multicolored jelly gnomes that make what sounds like the Roblox death noise layered on top of itself while dropping various shiny coins, all while drum and bass disco is starting to drop in the background. As I write this out, it sounds more like a game designer's acid trip than an actual real video game. After the initial thrust into gameplay, you are given some time to figure out what the hell is going on. For starters, there's a mini-map in the bottom left. 4 buttons along the bottom that you can use to move, halt, attack, or cancel. You can attack move, but I didn't figure that out until about a third through the game. The bottom right is a unit display to show what kind of unit is highlighted. It serves literally no other purpose. The top right is your money meter with a reinforcements button next to it. Money is dropped by dead Martians and is used to buy soldiers and secret Soviet superweapons like anthrax. This economy system is perhaps the game's greatest flaw and fun sucker. The only source of these coins are your enemies. If you run out of units and coins, then you will be forced to restart a level. I also had to dedicate a unit or two to coin collection duty while everything else fought. I genuinely tried to get through Stalin vs. Martians legit. But by mission 7, I've activated Cheat Engine and have identified the variable for player gold. My game crashed when I tried to use Stalin's Falcons at the very end of mission 6, so I gave up. Somehow, this was the only time the game would crash on me. As I continued to play, I began to notice something. A lot of the music is actually okay to pretty good. Upon listening to the soundtrack alone, most of it slaps. Though I have a feeling this might be some Stockholm Syndrome induced by repetitive song structure and a limited number of songs per level. I'm gonna do my best to work around copyright because I'm pretty sure a fair amount is licensed music and some of it could possibly not be licensed properly. If I fail, I'll try to direct you guys to the soundtrack on YouTube. However, the longer I play, the more glaring the game's problems become as well. There's the occasional graphical error, but those could just be DGVoodoo. The gameplay quickly devolves into either defending a position or attack moving toward another. Difficulty can ramp up too depending on what enemies the game will throw at you. These Martians that look like overinflated Toy Story aliens are my worst nightmare. I keep expecting one to start preaching to me about our Lord and Savior the Claw. Instead, they snipe my tanks in 1 or 2 hits and appear to have a range that is just outside view range of your units. There's so much wrong with the gameplay here. From the shoddy pathfinding to how long I have to press the mouse buttons for the game to even react. It's all wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. So much of this appears to be intentionally wrong, and because it's meant to be wrong, I guess they did a good job. I really don't want to dwell on it too much for the sake of my sanity. I'd rather talk about the strange enemies, like the shirtless blue elephant trunk men who moan when they die. There are kamikaze shrooms, psychedelic frogs, classical green men, dollar store beholders, artillery bugs, and perhaps Stalin's greatest enemy, lizards. He's an old lizard phobe, you know. Don't quote me, but I'm near certain they ripped assets from Blitzkrieg 2 for the infantry and tank models. I played a fair amount on a copy I acquired in my early teenage years, so I'm familiar with them. The story plays out over 12 different missions, each with their own introduction written by Stalin. They start mildly serious, but become more strange by the end. But he's clearly interested in you, comrade. Otherwise he would not be sending all these X's and O's in his letters. This is a game whose story begins in Siberia and culminates in a counter-invasion of Mars.
Space!
Here's a quick spoiler warning in case you care, because I'm just gonna start talking about the entirety of the game so you don't have to play it. Of course, being the model Soviet citizen, you follow your orders from Comrade Stalin. The first few missions go well until it is discovered that almost all of Siberia is under control of alien imperialism. They are infecting the land with a strange slime that is turning the land into something inappropriate for the doctrine of communism. You are to make them pay for the motherland. Mission 4 revolves around the secrets of Siberia. See what the normal comrade knows about myths and legends. The more equal comrade such as yourself knows that Siberia contains the source of red magic. But somehow the enemy has learned the state's secrets and summoned a giant worm. You perform a counterspell of your ancestors by sacrificing penal battalions to altars. These penal battalions contain only traitors to the state, of course. The spell results in 3 hairy golems? These are the only units who can actually fight the giant snail worm. Everything else just stands there and slowly gets run over. With the end of this mission comes our first intermission. These are videos approved by the state that have been provided for you for your downtime between missions. This first one is a music video for Stalin, as performed by Firelake. It features a band of aliens playing Soviet metal while Stalin breaks down.
The Empire's fall, but we are standing tall. This mother Russia will never die. But in our lives, that where we have hearts. It's time to shine it bright and feel your love song with that power to fight. Crimson God, you can lead us now into the blaze of victory immortal. Crimson God, stop the evil that keeps behind.
I can barely understand the vocalist to the point I can't tell what language he's speaking. The blue trunk men are really unsettling in this video. It is something about how their noses are animated. Now, I was completely caught off guard by the intermission. When it ended, I kept shouting, "What?" repeatedly at my monitor. And then we move on like nothing ever happened. Now this next mission hits little too on point in ways it never meant. Mission 5 is about securing oil supplies to prevent the aliens from taking all of our natural resources. If you, the Orthodox Shaman Commander, fail in your mission, then the tanks will stop. And if the tanks stop, then hyperinflation will commence, and Soviets will be forced to eat each other like they do in imperialistic countries. Stalin implores you to find the aliens for the better of the nation before signing, "Sincerely yours, Uncle Joe."
No! God, please, no! No!
Stalin drops us a line before Mission 6 to let us know that we are assigned to lead the big attack. Kranatake is an operation to recapture a secret Soviet city and purge the alien population just like the good old 30s. This is the mission that broke me and crashed near the very end. Mission 7 is nothing special outside the name Slimegrad, an infantry-only mission that introduces the arty bugs. Next. Mission 8's objective is to kill a huge slime that threatens the whole operation. To help, Stalin is providing some of his superpowers such as historical inevitability. but you know he can't do it for free. He might be your friend and all, but you're gonna need to pay Stalin 650 rubles to actually use it. For good reason too. The ability annihilates anything in its blast zone. I discovered this upon immediately using it on the enemy slime and ending the level. Maybe if I had looked longer than 2 seconds, I would have seen his graduation cap. I might have realized that this was a learned and intelligent slime. One whom I could have reasoned with in a mature man-to-slime conversation. Such is life. This is followed by our second interlude, another music video called Gorbachev, as performed by ANJ. This music video occurs in real life and totally not on a green screen stage. We see proud Soviet women doing their best for the nation while their husbands freeze and starve on front lines. Then suddenly they are attacked by evil zombies dressed in Soviet uniforms. As everyone knows, zombies are the result of Nazi experimentation into the occult. Thus, these could not be Soviet zombies. The women cry out for help. A cry that is heard by none other than a buff Mikhail Gorbachev with a battle axe. He saves the ladies while I believe a Slavic punk band plays in the background. Pure madness. Seeing shit like this makes me suspect that Crocodile played a part in the creation of Stalin vs. Martians. Pepsi Cola and Twinkies consumed, we move on to the next mission. But not before Stalin congratulates you on a job well done, reminiscing about the good old days when he adjusted the intelligentsia. Mission 9 is sort of the worst by default because it's an escort mission, and the scientist you escort is unbelievably slow. Behind the door leads to a portal to Mars that you enter. Once there, Stalin congratulates you for being the first man to step foot on Mars. You are thus promoted to Orthodox Commander Shaman Gagarin. Stalin proclaims himself Prince of Mars before ordering you to secure the beachhead for the Soviet invasion. This mission is notable for me because it's the first time you're given access to the Katyusha. For those who don't know, that's the Soviet rocket truck you sometimes see in memes. It is devastatingly good at dealing damage, but their AI has no concept of movement when you order them to attack something out of range. On the plus side, a bit of the Soviet anthem plays when they spawn. Mission 11 starts with an emergency message via Soviet phone from the master of the Tides of Time himself, Stalin. The final push is here, but the aliens are ready for you. They will fight to the bitter end to defend their homeland. Wait a second. Are the aliens an analogy for the Empire of Japan? Maybe I'm overanalyzing. In any case, the glorious descendants of the Soviet Union are here to lend their assistance in this push. They arrive in an out-of-place futuristic tank, but at this point, what isn't? The tank is outright busted, killing everything in a single shot while barely taking any damage at all. The only truly annoying part about this mission is the hunt for the last enemies hidden in the hills like the Mujahideen. Mission 12, the final level, is quite possibly the most insane of them all. But before that, we must exercise for the motherland. A strong people creates a strong nation. In his final transmission, War Master Stalin informs you that he is in orbit around Mars and you will keep his landing zone clear. The final mission begins with a brutal assault on your starting base. But if you can survive, Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin himself arrives on the battlefield. He towers over all foes, reminding them how puny they are in the face of the ultimate Soviet man. The final boss is of course none other than Alien Hitler. It is no surprise the Nazis would ally with the aliens to gain any possible advantage over their foes. On second thought, I do think the aliens might be an analogy for the Japanese in World War II. The game ends with a dead alien Hitler, credits rolling, and Stalin dancing the disco. I could not think of a more appropriate way for the nightmare to end. This story is beyond bad trip and fever dream levels. This is Slav jank that knows it's bad and runs with it. It's kind of terrifying if I'm going to be honest. Alright, now I'm going to mess a bit with the people who skip spoilers. 3, 2, 1. And of course Trotsky and Tukhachevsky married the aliens. There was always bad blood between them and Stalin. To sum it all up, Stalin vs. Martians is an abysmal game, but is meant to be bad, and like an ogre, there are layers to its badness. While I find myself enjoying the humor and absurdity, I despise interacting with it. I do not recommend actually playing this game in the slightest. It is among, if not the worst RTS game I have ever played. Any level of interaction is honestly not worth it, because even though this is a bad game made for the lulz, it's still a bad game. And I argue in order to actually make a so bad it is good game, you have to have solid gameplay that people actually want to continue forward with despite the nightmare. A la Cruelty Squad, if you will. Stalin vs. Martians was actually available for sale at one point. Somewhere, some poor souls spent their real money on this game. About 2 months after it was released, it was removed from digital stores and is now functionally abandonware. So if you really want, you can acquire it at one of the usual suspects. There is a Stalin vs. Martians 3 and 4 lurking on the internet, but neither game has seen the light of day, with 3 supposedly releasing in 2013 and 4 in 2021. I think that might be for humanity's benefit though. The next game will be another RTS, but I'm caught between 2 options. I think it's really gonna come down to if I can get option 2 to run on my system. Thanks for watching.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism.